Start. Good afternoon and welcome to the County of Santa Clara's Finance and Government Operations Committee meeting. You'll notice on the agenda that it's also publicly noticed as Children, Seniors, and Family Committee meeting, which is another standing committee that Supervisor Chavez and I both serve on. So it's a Brown Act requirement that we let people know that things can come up that might have Brown Act implications for both committees, but this is primarily Finance, Government, and Operations Committee agenda today. It was published and reviewed with that in mind, and we will call the meeting to order at this time. Let the record show that Supervisor Chavez and I are both present, so we have the full quorum of the committee, and we'll, starting with Mr. Meacher, we'll ask folks on the dais to self-introduce before we get started with public comment.
Steve Mitra, Assistant County Counsel.
Jeff Smith, County Executive.
Supervisor Cortese.
Supervisor Chavez.
Okay, thank you. We will now move on to public comment, which is item number 2 on the agenda. As most people know, this is an item that is reserved to speak on items that are not on the agenda today but are pertinent to the county's business. That said, when we have 5 or fewer speaker requests, and we have 2 today, we allow up to 3 minutes to comment on this item. People who submit speaker cards or asked to speak on items later on the agenda will be limited to 2 minutes under normal circumstances per speaker, but 3 minutes for the following 2 speakers, Jesse Hill and Scott Largent. Please come up in any order and speak to us. Good afternoon.
Ready when you are. Oops, sorry about that, hitting the microphone up there. Good afternoon, everyone. Scott Largent. Been attempting to use some of the self-help options in our county. And I do talk sometimes about the Law Foundation, and it's a very, it's just a very difficult place to get help. It's always what our courts say to go use. They always say, you know, the Law Foundation will help you do this, they'll help you do that. What I'm getting at right now is an office that I shared with Susan Bassey. All my property is basically still in this office on the Alameda right now. What they were able to rig, and I didn't really want to talk about this up until the court hearing on the 23rd, when those restraining orders will be basically locked in place to keep her away from our county. What they did is they got an elder adult restraining order against me, and they bypassed doing an unlawful detainer. My property's all there, and then what they did next after that is they did an illegal lockout. So I was not able to get computer equipment, cameras, a lot of my paperwork, all my kids' toys, basically cripple me. And what I've been doing now is I was able to figure out that it is an unlicensed dwelling there. There was no permit ever obtained to have that apartment that's behind the building on the Alameda right there. Now, when I went into the Law Foundation to ask for help, they said they couldn't help me because an unlawful detainer had not been filed, which seems kind of strange because what they are doing is rigging the system to bypass that right there because they don't want it getting out that it is an unlicensed dwelling. So what I've done now is I filed the complaint with the city, and they'll send code enforcement out there, but that takes 7 to 14 days. And I continue to contact San Jose Police Department, meeting them over there 300 feet away to do a civil standby. This has been very difficult. I'm kind of stuck in the middle of all this stuff right now. Our county, although I've been included in these, basically in these motions to kind of protect me, we're protecting a commissioner, we're protecting a county employee, but we're not really doing is we're not protecting the member of the public. I'm the member of the public that attended all these meetings, and I'm just getting annihilated right now. I need help getting my property. I'm a witness for the county counsel's office and the DA's office. So what I'm wondering is, when does somebody help me get my property? When is a civil standby called into our sheriff's department to help me get my stuff? I'd like to get my kids' toys. I'd like to get my other belongings. It seems kind of simple, but I'm running in circles right now trying to figure all this stuff out. Now, I'm trying to keep quiet about things because we have an upcoming hearing on the 23rd, and I am cooperating with the county. I don't consider myself a rat. These people destroyed my life. I just need help. I want my stuff back. I want my kids' toys back. So thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please, Mr. Hill. Just come on up. There's a speaker built in the panel there. You can just start talking, and you'll have 3 minutes. Hi.
Hello, my name is Jesse Hill. I'm a custody support assistant with the Sheriff's Office / Department of Corrections, the main jail. I've worked for the department for 23 years. I'm truly blessed. Back in June, I presented a realignment presentation for us custody support assistants at the jail. That includes Elmwood main jail, CCW operations, industries, programs, all that. But I hear the county has said that positions we compared ourselves to are not comparable because of the difference of the positions, or we compared ourselves, or the names, I should say. But I'll get back to that. Over the years, I've heard Santa Clara County described as unique to other counties. On the county's own website, the Santa Clara County is described as unique because of its combination of physical attractiveness and economic diversity, with its numerous natural amenities and one of the highest standards of living in the country. The county has long been considered one of the best areas in the United States in which to live and work. Lately, that's just true for people who make over $150,000 a year. With that said, let's get back to comparable positions, to the word unique, because unique describes the custody support assistants within the jail system. When comparing our position to other positions similar to ours, comparable, and you look at the job specs of each one, we do most, if not the vast majority, of what the other jobs do combined. From sheriff's aide, custody control specialist, property keeper, whatever other title you want to throw in there. Here in Santa Clara County, custody support assistants are unique. We are the first line of defense when you enter through one of the 3 entrances at the main jail. We are who you see first. Over the years, especially the last few years, with the jail being in the news and going through jail reform, our workload and responsibilities have increased while our wage increases are minuscule. We make less than the other positions we compared ourselves to, while our workload and cost of living has increased immensely, which contradicts the highest standard of living statement on the website. Which gets me to one of the points here. Trying to retain people, trying to retain employees is really hard. We lose people all the time to the Sheriff's Academy, whether it's in custody or enforcement or other positions within the county. We just want our realignment approved for what are close to what we've asked, and stop saying, hey, we're custody support assistants.
We understand your point.
So
We're hearing you loud and clear.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time.
We can't take action or respond, as I announced in the beginning, on these items, but we can take them under consideration and advisement. And if you need access to anyone in county administration, please talk to either the Office of Supervisor Chavez or mine. We can follow up with you afterwards. Thank you.
thank you.
All right. Thank you all for your comments on item 2. That brings us to the consent calendar. Supervisor Chavez, I'm become aware that the administration intended to delete item 12 from the agenda, which is the Immigrant Relations Annual Report. Aside from that, I know there had been some discussion as to whether or not we are ready to hear the management audit, item 4. Why don't I turn the floor over to you and get your recommendations on how you'd like to proceed with consent, which is currently items 10 through 19.
So a couple of recommendations I would like to make. If I think we can put items 4 and 6 on consent. I'd like to keep item 5 item 7, which is the management, I'm sorry, and then on management, on item 7, what I'd like to do is ask that we defer this item so that we can put it on an agenda where this is the primary issue. And with also giving, frankly, I needed a little more opportunity to digest the report than I was able to do for this meeting. So if we could defer that to a meeting that is relatively light, and then what I wanted to ask is that upon that meeting, that we try to do that meeting so that the board could hear this item no later than November.
All right, so would it sounds like what might be satisfactory, given that I have to arrange the agenda as the board, as the chair of this committee, that we would take this item 7 and put it first on the agenda for October.
Perfect, yeah.
I don't think we need to separate it out as any kind of special session, but put it first and just know that we're going to spend as much time as we need on it before we move on to the other items.
Perfect.
And then 4, are you asking for a 1-month deferral on 4, or continuance, I should say? 4 is the building operations audit.
Yeah, I was actually just going to put that on consent. I was putting 4 on consent, 6 on consent, and deferring item 7.
I think the county executive wants to speak on 4 if
Okay.
we're going to take action on it, so we
Okay.
should probably, we could
Leave that on the
hear.
meeting, okay.
Would you
Yep.
prefer, if we're going to end up deferring the item, or continuing the item?
Look,
Jeff,
we
was
can
it
leave-
4 that you wanted to speak to, first of all?
No.
Okay,
You can put 4 on consent if you'd like.
okay,
7 was the one that I had a little presentation on, but we can
got it.
delay that until October.
Got it. Okay, thank you. So let's go back to square one. So since I've now confused everyone, we can clear everything up. So you're suggesting item 4 on consent, which appears to be fine with the administration, and 6 to be added to consent, period. And then 7 to be continued and to be heard first on the October agenda. Okay, anything else that would leave?
And then I would just pull item 10.
Pull item 10. We will hear item 10 in its order, right after item 9, which was otherwise going to be the last discussion item. So that leaves, that puts 4, 6, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and essentially 20 as well on consent. Is that
With the deferral of item 7,
with
yes.
the deferral of item 7, and 12 is deleted
Yes.
at the request of the administration? Okay, if the clerk has that, we will call that unanimous. You get a vote on this one. All right, thank you. Okay, we're going to now, and I probably should have done this before I said unanimous, but we're going to hear Scott Largent, who has requested to speak on the consent calendar. And Scott, if you convince us that something should be changed about this calendar, we will reconsider and we will take up your concern. Otherwise, we will hear you in good faith.
Okay,
Thank you.
sounds like a plan, Dave. Thank you, thank you. Ready, Colin? Thank you. As far as the whistleblower program, I was basically, Jeff Smith and Mike Wasserman, a couple meetings ago, had recommended that I talk to the whistleblower program regarding records being released. Somebody was able to access records from my parents' divorce files. They were able to access psychological reports, probation report from when I was 11 or 12 years old, got in a little trouble at school. And the good part about contacting the whistleblower program was that immediate response from Paul Murphy. And I do appreciate that. He got back to me right away, shot me an email, and he set up an appointment. Now, when I came down here to the county building, it was inviting in a way. And he also took me into a private room. Now, that's very important because some of this stuff you just don't want to discuss around people. I don't want to be out here in the hallway. You know, sometimes people want to meet in the cafeteria. It's personal stuff. And I do appreciate Paul doing that. I think you have the right person there. And I do understand there's only a certain amount that the whistleblower program can do. At the time that my parents went through this divorce, these records were attachments in their divorce file. People have obtained these. This stuff is circulating now on the internet. And so people are able to access this stuff. They're able to access your records. I would hope that our DA's office would maybe start looking into how this stuff's getting out there. It's not just my stuff. There's a lot of people's information that's out there, and I think people need to start paying attention to that. I don't think it's very secure. So thank you.
All right, thanks for the feedback. We appreciate it. With that, unless there's any disagreement from you, Supervisor Chavez, we'll move on from consent
Thank you.
and leave the motion approved as it stands. And we will move on to item 5, 4 having been put on consent. And 5 is the job order contracting and project labor agreements report, which we've been tracking here month after month for the last couple of months. Welcome.
Hi, it's Jeff Draper from the Facilities and Fleet Department. With me, we have my illustrious colleague, Harry Freitas from the Roads and Airports Department, and my Deputy Director, Andy Walker. What you have before you is the answers to some specific questions that the committee asked for regarding the job order contract and PLAs. And I don't think we need to belabor what's in the report exactly, but we'll ask if you would like to have questions on it or not.
Supervisor Chavez, comments or additional questions beyond what's here?
Thank you. So first of all, I really appreciated the information. I'm learning more about job order contracts than I ever thought was possible to learn about job order contracts. Let me start with a philosophical question, and then I just have 2 requests that I'd like to make off agenda, if that's okay. And my first kind of big picture question is, would it be in the interest of the county to have longer-term agreements with a higher capacity than $5 million for the on-call jobs?
My opinion would be yes. Obviously, we go through several of the, in the Facilities and Fleet Department alone, we go through several job order contracts per year. I believe it would take some legislative work to do that, because currently I think the Public Contracts Code only allows it to be 1 year long.
If given that, is there another structure outside of the job order contract that we could use to meet that need? And what I'm really responding to was, which I thought was fascinating, was how fast and how many of these contracts we get through that are it's relatively a lot of money given the amount of, and just frankly, given the amount of work that we have to do.
Another mechanism, I honestly, I haven't, from the Public Works Code or for the Public Contracts Code, there's not another mechanism spoken to in there. If it was truly just an ongoing maintenance contract, we can do line item contracts separately for those, and those are acquired through procurement. They could be through a board contract as well, and they could be for a longer term if that's desirable by the board. We could certainly work with them on maintenance activities, but true building repair and other things like that, that's covered specifically by the Public Contracts Code.
So meaning that we don't have another tool we can use?
Individual minor contracts, that's the way we would normally do it. Harry, do you know of anything else that would?
Yeah, my comment is just, the selection of delivery methods for construction activities. It's highly dependent on the type of work that you're doing, and, have some familiarity with building construction, which involves multiple systems and lots of subcontractors, and so just a different approach to the work. There are ways of structuring, and this is like for roads and civil work. They can be structured in such a manner that you utilize line items, particularly with roads. There's less line items, less trades, right? Asphalt, pipe, rock, retaining wall. The issue that we've run into in the past with longer-term contracts has to do with the volatility of road construction and the seasonality, and kind of equalizing the cost of asphalt over multiple seasons and whether the busy season. So, we're very open to new methods of delivering our work, and we understand there's some new legislation working through in Sacramento. I think it's referenced in the staff report. We're excited about different ways of delivering But the JOC works pretty well for heavy construction, which is what I describe a roads work to do. JOCs work pretty well for us for the purpose that we use them for. They came in very, very handy when we did the storm repairs. They were instrumental in us being able to deliver the storm repairs.
So if the state legislature is looking at best value contracting, then I guess the other question I would ask is, if we're using best value contracting, is the JOC, because of its limited time frame, still going to be of the same value, even if you have more flexibility? And here's the reason there are two things I'm trying to better understand. And one is that if we can create more predictability, I'm wondering if we'll get more and higher quality of folks applying for these contracts, because in some respects, in fact, I've even wondered whether or not it was possible for us to do a minimum expenditure, just given that you do plan pretty far in advance. And I think the point that Harry raised about seasonal, the impacts of seasons, that makes some sense that may be more challenging in roads, but a lot of our work is internal, and it's TIs, and we've got a lot of buildings, and so that's what's prompting the question.
I like the way you're thinking, I do. Well, in the federal government, we used to do multi-year contracts, usually with the idea that if the contractor was performing, obviously they would be able to get another option and continue to go forward. So that the federal contracting allows multiple year maintenance and repair contracts. The state code currently doesn't here.
Let me jump in on that. I think in order to answer your question completely, we probably need to come back to you with county council's input, because at least what I know about the better value movement that's going on doesn't specifically address the JOC contract requirement. But, you know, we should review that and get a off agenda back to you going over all the issues.
Well, I would actually say, like, if we're going to do a little more study, then it would be fine to finish this discussion back here, because
Okay.
it's got some moving pieces to it. So I think one that you're raising that I really appreciate is what's within the purview of our capacity to think flexibly about how we respond to these kinds of situations and contracts. The second is, I do recognize that if we can create some predictability for vendors, that we actually may have a shot at getting folks who wouldn't normally want to do public work really prioritizing us, and that I think would be really actually very good. And then the third issue is that the way we use contracts, so this $5 million metric is interesting, because if you're getting close to that 85% annual usage, then it begs the question as to whether or not it would have been possible for us to make those contracts bigger had we had more flexibility in terms of being able to bring people on. And again, if we created some predictability for them, would we be able to do that? And then therefore, should it be multi-year or at least 2 years? So I would love to get your best thinking on that. And then as you give some thought to that, could you actually attach, when this comes back to us with your thoughts on that, the actual list? Because it would be interesting by department to understand, are we looking at particular providers that have capacity? Are we, I just want to better understand the trends. And then the other thing I'd be really interested in understanding is, given, I was looking at the list, the capital list that was on, it was attached to one of the items at the board, and I can't remember what item it was, but it just looked at all of the work that we're looking at in terms of deferred maintenance. I don't even know how you sleep at night, but I was looking at that list thinking, oh my gosh, based on how much money we know we have, how much of this can we possibly knock out over the next couple of years so that list just doesn't get bigger? And then it started me thinking a little bit more about our partnerships in the construction community that frankly don't look at the public sector or don't look at us because of that cap. And so, anyway, just so you understand, that's what's prompting this. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's great. We'll come back.
Okay, so we're receiving the report, but asking for that information to come back. or
Yeah,
that
just a
analysis.
committee when you're if you could in the next couple meetings.
Okay. Target being November, December timeframe? Got it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you on that. That concludes that item then. 6 is a corporate, 6 was on consent, I'm sorry. 7 was continued. 8 has to do with reissuance of void warrants and inventory recommendations. Actually was a pretty clear report, but we'll see if we have any questions. Anything you want to add to it, George?
For your question, Supervisor.
Okay, yeah, it seemed to be a rather ministerial item, but we left it on just in case there were questions, Supervisor Chavez.
I had just one minor question, and I apologize that if it was in the report and I missed it, but I was wondering how big a problem is this?
Both of these items are actually, and pardon me, my name is George Dorley, Controller Treasurer for Finance Director Alan Minato. Supervisor Chavez, neither of these are burning problems. They're basically cleanup questions that we've hit over the years. For instance, on the issue of the inventory when a department head changes, it's simply a matter of the ordinance says that the prior needs to give it to the new person, but the new person often isn't here. So it's simply a matter of we've inserted, if there isn't the replacement there in-house, that they can basically give that inventory to me. I'm going to sign for it, and then I'll give it to the new person. And then also on the issue of the reissuance of warrants, it's a matter of now that we have a much clearer document retention, therefore document destruction schedule that County Council is heading up, we now basically destroy some of the supporting documentation that we would need to reissue a warrant at a certain point in time. So we're now going to sync up the timeline so that we actually have the information to be able to know if we can reissue it. So yes, I consider these to be pretty ministerial in nature.
Great, thank you. And I would move we receive the report and forward it to the board.
Okay, item is moved as recommended or as submitted, and that is a unanimous vote by the committee. Thank you. Item 9 is the Veteran of the Year program. Seems like a good thing that we get to do ceremonially. Maybe you can just explain very quickly for those listening what we've got here in our packets. Thank you.
Absolutely. My name is Tracy Hess, and today I'm representing the Office of Veteran Services. So the report that you have is the implementation plan for the Veteran of the Year program, and this was developed by our Veterans Commission. The process includes nominations being received by the board offices, and then those nominations will be forwarded to the commissioners, who will then review all of the nominations and then give a recommendation to each of the district supervisors. So at the end, we will actually have 5 Veteran of the Year, 1 for each district. We have a pretty aggressive timeline on this. We are hoping to implement this and actually make awards for this November. So, and I have available to answer any other questions you have.
And the idea is concurrent with Veterans Day or Veteran
Exactly.
ceremonies to be able to
Yes,
somehow
that
coordinate
is
the
correct.
announcements?
That is correct.
Okay, well, thank you. It's exciting and fun. Any questions, Supervisor Chavez?
I think it's wonderful. I would just ask if you could respond to some questions from my office that were sent to you, Tracy, from Kathy.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
I think it's very exciting.
Good. We're excited.
It will certainly be well received in the community. So thank you for that and for doing the work to get this to us. So the recommendations moved by Supervisor Chavez is actually to receive the report and then forward a favorable recommendation to the Board of Supervisors so we get there as quickly as possible. Dr. Smith, and then from there they can move as quickly as possible to try to exact out of our offices who our recommendations are. I'm sure the clerk will help with that.
Sure. We'll
Thank you.
get Megan on you right away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, another unanimous vote. Item 10 is the Timpani Center Operations and Usage Report. Supervisor Chavez, I know you wanted to have some discussion on this item.
Thank you. I'm a big fan of the Timpani Center, and I really just had some very broad questions, and I wanted to ask Dr. Smith also for your your thoughts on this. So part of the reason that I pulled this item is that I have been a user of the Timpani Center and been around it quite a lot, and really appreciate all the work that you've done to fix it up. And I also just wanted to acknowledge Supervisor Yeager's not here, but part of the reason the Timpani Center still functions is he really got San Jose State and the county to start working together to better, well, frankly, to save the center. I thought the feedback you gave about the finances were actually really helpful to understand, and it prompts actually a couple of questions, and I'm not sure if you will know the answer to this or if we have to go search a little bit. Question one is that based on the structure of the agreement and the requests that we have from staff about times to access it, particularly VHP, what I'm wondering is that the contract we currently have with San Jose State, does it give us enough time to make sure that everybody has access, particularly to the pool? And the reason I ask that question is that, as a user of the service, sometimes it's not accessible. You know, you have private lessons or you have different activities going on during the day, so not necessarily as many classes you would like. And something that has nothing to do with you, but Dr. Smith, something that I would be really interested in us looking at is whether or not working with VHP, we can create even more access for more folks to use the pool, because it's like a great way to keep people from out of our emergency room for sure. But on the first question, I guess is really the time. Do you feel like the hours of operation allow for full access, or do you know the answer to that?
I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know it off the top of my
Okay.
head.
I wouldn't have expected. I know this is a weird kind of. There's an operation and a facility component to it.
Let's see if our employee wellness program can answer the question for you.
Good afternoon, Teresa Chagoy from Employee Wellness. So I'm understanding that the pool is open from a 6 a.m. to later in the afternoon, but I'm not quite sure as far as VHP's access. They're the ones specifically that have the component in their contract to work with them on the pool services. So that's the only thing I'm not sure for their membership. They do have classes that they offer specifically to the Valley Health Plan members through the pool services, but I'm not sure what exactly the.
So, yeah, Dr. Smith?
No, I don't know either. I think we'll have to get back to you on the hours of service, but if I'm understanding you correctly, you're wanting to expand those hours?
Right, and part of there are two things that I'm trying to figure out, and I guess what I'm wondering is how if you're signed up through these for classes through employee wellness, they're almost always locked out because there's a cap on the number of people that can sign up, which makes sense because the pool's finite, right? You can't just have a bunch of people in it, but not everybody attends for everything they sign up for, so that we have an employee wellness component, and then we have Valley Health Plan that has people using the pool.
Right.
And there are a couple of issues. One is, does everybody know they have access to this resource? And then two, how do we manage the resource in a way that gives maximum capacity, but also has a financial partnership that works? And so they have they've had some new management there that I think is really taking a very good look at the finances. I think that was reflected even in the discussion. But what I'm really interested in understanding is, what's the need relative to the capacity, and then relative to the fact that these guys have been fixing it on an ongoing basis. It's got a very Winchester Mystery House feel to the way it works. Like one day it's the pool's warm, and the next day, not so much. Although that hasn't happened since you all have fixed it, gotten in there. But in any case, I really am trying to figure out, how do we get the maximum usage out of that facility?
We'll come back to you.
Okay.
Maybe we could just, I know it's customary to go to the board first for referral, but because it's an item before us
Yeah.
already, just to essentially receive the report but attach the referral to it. And, if it's important for it to just come back to the board, we can stipulate that whatever happens when it comes back, this referral for an analysis of options for different programming or expanded programming, I think is what's being asked for. And if we could just ask that comes here, but I think we can stipulate in the motion that it would be our intent to forward any recommendations that come back to the full board. So we're not trying to hijack the board's authority, but just to cut to the chase so we don't have to have yet another referral at the board level.
Sure.
It's just going to delay everything a couple of weeks. Is that
Yeah,
satisfactory?
that's great.
Okay. And I don't know how long it would take you to put that analysis together and communicate with San Jose State and everything. Maybe the first meeting in January or first meeting in the new year. Is that soon enough?
That seems reasonable to me. We'll certainly get with the stakeholders that are involved in answering that question and come back if there's a different.
Yeah, I
date
mean,
in
let
mind.
us give it your best shot over the next 90 days, and then if that, let my office know if you're close but not quite there, and we could continue it. But knowing that you're working on it is the main thing.
Will do.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, that concludes that item. With that motion essentially adopted unanimously by the committee. So that brings us to adjournment, I believe, with the adjusted consent calendar as approved earlier, taking care of everything else on the agenda. We appreciate all of the standing reports, semi-annual reports, quarterly reports, and certainly the Office of Sustainability's report, which we didn't talk about today in discussion, but which was very thorough. So thank you all very much. And
Will you stay there?
we will move on, and Supervisor Chavez is asking the constituents to hang in there for a minute. Okay, thank you. We are officially adjourned.